at 8:25. They check his pulse at 8:25:50. The EMTs arrive at 8:27:26, and the restraint continues until 8:28:43. And then the second is a more complete timeline that's got 3 rows on it. That same time period, it's got key moments of things that were said or done by the officers, and then by George Floyd, and then also noting things that he didn't say or do towards the end, that he was not responsive. And then the bottom is with the bystanders. So this is a pretty intricate layering of key things said and done throughout this time period. And they were just going to get into that then when they took the lunch break, because it is pretty extensive testimony coming up about this time.
Robin, I noted that you're the pool reporter today, so you are physically in the courtroom watching all of this. And some interesting moments transpired this morning as the court got underway related to the viewing of all of these videos. Apparently, Paul Magnuson, the federal judge in this case, is very concerned about the jurors seeing maybe too much of the video, and he had raised some concerns about showing many of these clips in their entirety.
Yeah, and he's expressed these concerns all throughout this, that he doesn't want to overload the jurors with uncomfortable video. Only the amount that's necessary to see what happened and to witness all this. The key evidence here. You have to see the videos, he told the jurors during jury selection. You can't avoid not watching all these videos. But what he wants to do is not have it become overwhelming by repeated viewings or seeing things too many times. That's unnecessary, he said, because it just gets too difficult. And the defense attorneys are worried about it becoming too emotional, that it can sway the jurors. Yeah. That they get overwhelmed by seeing this, and that they may not be able to see the evidence objectively because they're overwhelmed by the emotion of repeated viewings of this. So they're careful to make sure that they see everything, but not see it too much. So what happened today, Tim, I was going to point out that the prosecutor intended to play the body cameras in their entirety, all 3 of them. That's 30 minutes apiece. And the judge objected to that. He's like, you can't really be saying that they're gonna make them sit there and watch all of this. I don't want to do that. And she said, well, I had planned on only playing portions. It was the defense that requested I play them in their entirety. So then the judge kind of challenged the defense on that, and he was clearly kind of irritated, because this is exactly what he's been trying to avoid, is not only prolonging it because of the amount of time it takes, but by just overloading the jury with this. So then they agreed to go back and play only the relevant portions that are necessary for the evidence.
Robin, as long as we're on the topic of you being in the courtroom, fill us in. Be our eyes and ears. I mean, how many people are in the courtroom watching this? It is a federal trial, so and security around the courtroom is very tight. Give us a sense of who's in the room watching all of this.
Well, there's, in the back row on the left, and there's 3 rows, and these are like church pews in this courtroom, and many courtrooms are like that. They're, like wooden pews, essentially, and there's 3 rows on each side of the aisle coming in, and so myself and another reporter are in the back row today. In front of me is there's one woman in the row right in front of me, who I believe is a family member, but I don't know that for sure, of one of the defendants. In the front row today were 3 people. On the far left is who we've identified previously as Thomas Lane's wife. The other 2 people that are in the front there, I'm not sure, again, what their connections are. On the right side, Courtney Ross, who is George Floyd's girlfriend, is in the front row on the right side. She's been here many, many days. And during some of these videos today that the bystander, Alyssa, took, I mean, she was very visibly emotional. Tough for her to see this again and again, and was trying to hold back sobs in the courtroom, which again is something that the judge and the attorneys don't want visible, or audible emotions. So she's trying to be very respectful too, but you can tell at the same time,
hard for her to watch,
struggling with that. Yeah, and then there's a victim witness person and some other people that again that we've not fully identified what their connection is, and we have to be very careful and cautious, about interacting with people. So it's difficult to then, talk and ascertain that. But there were about 6-7 people on the right side of the courtroom in those 3 rows. So it's sparse, but still, there's not a lot of seating either.
Right.
So it's maybe a quarter of what its normal capacity could be.
Yeah. And before we wrap up here this noon hour, I want to talk about the first witness that was on the stand here today, and that's Chief Kelly McCarthy from Mendota Heights Police Department. She is significant because she's the chair of the Post Board here in Minnesota. And to set the scene for those viewers who are watching us on the stream from outside of Minnesota, the Post Board in Minnesota is called the Police Officers Standards and Training Board. This is the governing body that really essentially sets up the training procedures for peace officers in the state of Minnesota. So she was kind of an important witness to talk about the types of training that officers have to go through here, correct?
Yeah, and her testimony was relatively brief compared to other witnesses. She went through exactly what the post board requirements are for the law enforcement programs in the state. When you go to a program at a college or university, community college, to get your peace officer license, they set the requirements for what those programs need to teach. And she said it runs the gamut: skills, driving skills, gun skills, etc., medical training, constitutional law training, ethics, crisis intervention, a whole lot of things. She said there's more than 400 learning requirements that go into this, and there's a lot of it. What she was saying, and highlighted positional asphyxia is something that is taught. She said because it's closely related, she said, to the position we put people in for handcuffing. And because there have been a number of in-custody deaths, she said we had to put a learning objective on it, on what positional asphyxia is. So that was really, a big part of it, that is saying that these officers, again, this goes to the training, not by the police department, but the training that they would receive just to become a police officer in the state of Minnesota, and then the ongoing education that officers are required to get to maintain their law enforcement or their peace officer license. And so she just kind of set more of that baseline for that, to say that these officers should know some of these things.
Yeah, laying some
and before we go, too, I wanted
there.
to... Yeah, and to circle back to Alyssa Fenari, who was the eyewitness on the stand, and her cross-examination. She was examined by Defense Attorney Pauly, who represents Tu Tao, who was the one standing there on the street. And he asked her, and he was very, very calm with her, very respectful, non-aggressive, because you could tell it was very delicate testimony for her. But he did ask about Tao having his back to George Floyd and the officers, asking if at all possible that he would even know what was going on back there, because he couldn't see it. And she responded, he could hear it. And she kind of had an agitated tone when she said that, that kind of angered her a little bit. He could hear it, referring to he could hear George Floyd, and and then no longer hear George Floyd. He could hear all the things that the bystanders were saying. And then he again said, well, he's not watching what's going on behind him, is he? And she said, I wouldn't 100% agree with that, and notes that he looked back several times. So, and then there was no cross-exam from the other 2 attorneys, but that she made very much a point here. That is, Tu Tao's defense attorneys trying to make the case that he wouldn't know what was going on. She really rebutted him on that to say he would.
Rob, yesterday morning, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the counsel there, indicated that they had only perhaps maybe 5 witnesses or so left. We've had 3 so far today. Any indication in court as to whether prosecution will wrap up today, or do we maybe expect that on Monday?
Yeah, well, they had, when they said they had about 5 witnesses left, one of those took the stand yesterday, so we're on the 3rd today. So, I would expect then, if they're sticking to what their plan was, there would be maybe 1 more today. So I think, there's a good possibility we could wrap up today. But then again, some of these witnesses have been on the stand a long time, spanning 2 days, in some cases 3. So it's kind of hard to predict here exactly, if you got to go into a lot of detail here with this FBI agent about timeline, it could take a while. So it's anybody's guess at this point if they'll wrap up today.
And then we have, 3 defense attorneys who will all get their chance at cross-examination too, which is kind of unusual, but it's what we're doing in this particular case.
Yeah. Yep. And then the defense attorney takes their turns calling their witnesses to make their cases. And so again, there's 3 different defense teams here making 3 different defenses for 3 different defendants. So hard to predict exactly how long their side could take and how many witnesses they'll have. I would note that in the George Floyd, in the Derek Chauvin prosecution of his murder trial, there were 38 prosecution witnesses. We are on now the 18th or 19th prosecution witness for this federal trial. So a lot fewer witnesses, but still taking a lot of time because, again, you've got the prosecutors trying to prove charges against 3 defendants and then 3 defense attorneys cross-examining. So a lot fewer witnesses take a lot more time because of that 3 defendants right there.
Right there you have it. All right, Rob Olson coming to us from a federal court in St. Paul. Thanks, Rob. We're going to let you get some lunch, and court will be back in session here at 2 o'clock. We will be back here again on Monday at approximately the same time. Of course, the judge in this case has been very good about trying to break for lunch every day at about 12:30 or so, right in that ballpark. And that gives us a little bit of time to let Rob come out of court and come down and stand in front of a camera for us to update us on what's happening. So about the same time again on Monday, we'll give you an update as to everything that's been going on in court. In the meantime, we will also update you tonight on Fox 9 News beginning at 5 o'clock and throughout our evening newscasts as well. And you can find more information on fox9.com too. So thanks so much for joining us here this afternoon. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you on the news at 5 o'clock tonight. Have a great weekend, everybody.